This is Talking My Walking. I am Rodrigo Ribeiro, just another voice in the wilderness. Today I want to talk about body, mind, self, soul, and conscience. We most religions religions, there are many religions, and there are many differences, and I do not have enough knowledge to say to make these kind of statements. But the religions I know better, and let me rephrase it. Many people I know and I met, they believe in the separation of the body and the mind. They believe in concepts such as the higher self, the soul, and that explain us as moral beings. That our conscience comes from the idea that our genuine self is not material, is not organic, is not biological, is exists. We are incarnated, but we ourselves are not exactly our body. So our body is just the the vehicle, just to give us the experience or the possibility to evolve, or whatever it is, the concepts that we believe about how we're going to reach nirvana, or are going to go to paradise, or this or that, or so on and so forth. This concept is erroneous and is very dangerous. And for most people, they don't get it. Because before you have an analysis, before you think that you cannot be a moral being without having a soul, or an inner self, or a higher self, or whatever you want to call it, that is not your body, that is just that God's particle, that you are, that you have, that you that makes physical life, diminishing physical life, organic life, which is life. There is no such thing as we don't. There might have other forms of life, we don't know. But the life as we know it, and according to the knowledge that the scientific knowledge produced until now, we are probably, or we are seemingly, the only planet with such a complex life diversity, and it is really remarkable. And nonetheless, so many of us don't seem to give, as if life is something that is not physical life. Is not sufficiently relevant to be to be respected, to, to give us enough dignity. In our case, as human beings, we need this kind of super identity, or this identity that is not flesh. And I truly believe this kind of concepts and the narratives that are created around those concepts, those ideological narratives that are created, do not help us to dignify our life. It is the opposite. The people, I mean, this is not to bash religion, okay? This is just that everything needs to be, everything can be, we can have a critical analysis of anything that we produce, that our minds produce, okay? And we only have minds because we have a body. The body dies, and the mind dies. What is the mind then? According to my own understanding, okay? The mind is the mind, the soul, the spirit, the higher self. All those different words and concepts that are used, they only, to me, they are always the same, and they come from the same source. Our ability as human beings, as human beings, as socio-cultural human beings, that's our condition, which means that whatever we produce is always a product of ourselves as social beings, but also as cultural beings. What is a cultural being? A cultural being as us, with complex societies and complex culture, is our ability, the ability of our cognitive systems to produce a conscious mind. The conscious mind is not separated from the body. It is produced by the body. That with the creative imagination is not a product of the mind, is a product of our brain, the way our brain are wired. Okay? That's why we have creative imagination. That's why we have conscience. And conscience is the ability to have first, that the conscious is that we know about our individuality. We know that we are separated. We have the conscience that we are separated from and we can analyze in a comparative way. We can analyze things in perspective according to our own existence. And all this is produced by the way we are wired. I mean, we can have ideas about the creator, about, I mean, I would never say I would never think that that exists a being somewhere in any form of shape, ruling life and creating life. But it has, for me, the laws of nature are the laws of life. Okay, the laws of nature are the laws of life, and the things that when they come when the circumstances, are when the things are aligned in a way to produce a certain result, that result can happen naturally without the intervention of any special force or any special agency or agent, but because the conditions and the circumstances are aligned, and naturally the, those things can happen. It seems that the way life, the diversity of life, and all the things, the complexity of the living systems, and our body is organized with different systems and all the rest, and how we can have this conscious mind and have language, symbolic language, to explain things. That's because these all things are related. We explain ourselves and how we what we think about ourselves as human beings, as individuals, using the tools, the linguistic tools that we also develop through. So this is all of this is part of a process. So how could that happen with the body? That's why we have so many different languages. I mean, there is thousands and thousands of languages. Now most of them are a few are dominant, and many are very few people, maybe some thousands of people speaking certain specific languages or dialects. So, but this was the norm. Why did we have different cultures, different languages, very different from each other? Why did we develop like that? If we are all under the same creator, okay, the same rules, and if we are all human beings, I mean, wouldn't it make sense for a creator to create all of us with the ability to have to share a common language that we could then communicate with each other no matter what? No, that's not how it works. We develop specific language systems because we live in close proximity with other human beings. We form a community, a tribe, and therefore we develop a cultural identity, cultural norms, social norms, behaviors, blah, blah, blah. That is social regulation. That just happens by us interacting with each other in a specific environment. It doesn't require that process it happens because of the proximity physically and the experience in a specific environment. That we learn, we mimic the environment, we get our resources, our sustenance from the environment. So we build the knowledge and shape the behavior and our identity of that experience, by the experience of interacting with each other, by our relations, our social relations, which are a cultural experience and a linguistic experience, and with the wider environment. So therefore we build a specific, a genuine culture separated from the other cultures, and each group develops its own culture, because we all have the same abilities, the same cognitive, the same cognitive abilities, the same creative abilities, but they will be expressed and consolidated in different ways because we live different experiences that shape our culture, our specific culture. So the idea, in my perspective, conscience, the fact, conscience is not about morality. Okay, morality is exactly the consequence of our ability to have a conscience, to have the ability to think in a conscious way, to have the ability to produce conscious and critical analysis. Truth, trust, justice, it's part of our experience as social beings. Since we are intelligent, since we have the ability to compare, and we know what's good and what's bad because of the consequences of our acts. And we, to survive in small communities, as we did for most of our existence, trust and justice, that means that the need to cooperate, to reciprocate, not to compete, not to give everything. What could be the result of the winner takes it all in the context of a small community or a tribe that is surviving in the middle of the forest or wherever? What could be the result of it? Is it difficult to imagine the result of that form of conceptualizing life in a community? No, those concepts that we understand as concepts, they have evolved naturally in the result of the experience, in the result of ourselves as a socio-cultural species being able to be conscious about our experience, to have a conscious reflection and analysis of the consequences of our experience, of our social cultural experience. Okay, that's how. The problem with us that we have this ability to produce fictional stories. That's why I always say that we need to separate, to understand the difference between rational and logical. We need to be rational in order to follow logic, okay? But logic has nothing to do with truth. Logic is just following a certain pattern that to us, since we assume as truth, as true, a certain axiom, we follow that until we reach a conclusion which is wrong, because we follow a wrong axiom, so therefore we come to wrong conclusions. And that has happened and still happen. And by the way, in my opinion, it is the dominant way. That's why we have so much a big mess, because we take as truth what simply is fictional logic, by following a fictional, erroneous, totally false assumptions. We just misinterpret the reality, and there's a lot of misconceptions, and many other things that just make it very difficult to have a conversation, because everybody believes that they are right. They don't care about verifying it. Most of us don't care about verifying, about having an analyzed life. You know, we care about having, we just are indoctrinated in concepts and ideas and narratives that tell us this is like that, this is like that. And it could not be different because of this and because of that. If we do not have or develop our innate critical skills that need to be trained, and they are not part of the main culture, that's the truth, okay? Critical analysis is not part of the main culture. It's not how we are trained. It's not how our minds are trained to operate. Okay? It doesn't matter. You can have a PhD in anything. You have been trained to be good in certain things, to become a specialist, to become a tool of an instrument, to become in terms of technical terms, to be as perfect as possible, as accurate as possible, but not as a human being, not as a view of yourself and the environment and the culture and everything, as in a holistic way. That's out of the picture. So this is a mess, and it's so much confusion that is very difficult. You know, in order to navigate this, I mean, in order to navigate this and to become, to develop your critical skills, we need basically to start the understanding of language framing is so basic. Usually it always starts there. And by mimicry and repetition, it becomes the norm. And when it becomes the norm, there are not, in our times, in our societies, in our kind of cosmopolitan societies, we have this diversity. But nonetheless, we have the diversity, which means that we can pick and choose different kinds of perspectives. But still, most of those perspectives are in some ways, they are just subsystems or a branch of an original perception, which in the case of the mind, of this separation of the mind and the body and the existence of the mind, the soul, the spirit, the self, or the higher self, and the conscious, as if all these nothing to do with the body, nothing to do with the physical experience, nothing to do with our of us as sociocultural beings and our sociocultural experience. When I mean sociocultural, I mean economic, I mean professional, I mean everything that has to do with our experience as a living being, as a living organism, as an individual in a specific environment. What's the result of that experience? What influences us? What kind of indoctrination? What have you been exposed to? What are we exposed to on a daily basis? How conscious are we of how that being exposed to specific experience or specific environments, okay, specific types of indoctrination affects and shapes we are, how we perceive ourselves, how we perceive reality, how we build our relations, and everything else. And then we just become trapped. Yes, intellectually trapped, because I say it many times, and I'm going to repeat it again because it is a very important notion. Intellectual understanding by itself alone doesn't change you, doesn't change your conscience, doesn't change how you, doesn't change your behavior, doesn't change anything. And why? Because the only thing, that's why conscience is important, not as a moral guide, but as the process by which we have a conscious analysis, and therefore we can have a guidance, we can guide our own transformation. Okay? This is what I believe it's the true spiritual experience. As to be a human being, a unity, a holistic experience as an existence. In spite of all the things that happen with us, we need to have that exactly what we think, what we feel, and what we act, and how we act need to be aligned. And must have meaning. And this always comes through conscious transformation, but doesn't necessarily, you don't need, we need social and cultural experience, okay? Because we need to learn from each other. We need that experience. That sociocultural experience is crucial for our own development. But our own development is not an individual, it is an individual process, but is for the good, for the all good of all things, not only humans, but all things. And this doesn't need that you follow a prophet or a guru or somebody that tells you that knows better than you, that is receiving his knowledge and is from a higher being, from God or from whatever it is, and he has the responsibility to guide you. No, you need to develop your conscience. And your conscience is exactly that we are all able to think consciously, to have a conscious analysis. And that's what we need to really develop. And that doesn't require a separation from the mind and the body, because the mind is embodied. And that's good. If we want to build Eden, we must build it here. Because if we build heaven here, the Garden of Eden here, okay, not lost, we have to actively build it here. We can do it. In spite of all the problems, all the suffering, everything that is part of light, all the cruelty that we see in nature and blah, 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 we can and should be focused in building something good here. Not thinking about developing a higher self, a soul, or whatever it is for the afterlife, while neglecting understanding what a human being is in the real life, organic life. You know, this is so simple. If I would not have the ability to have a nice breakfast, I mean, whatever that concept is, whatever you like to eat, and drink my coffee, and be mildly worried, not worried enough that it affects my ability to focus on what I'm trying to think about, what I'm trying to express. Would you think that there was a bigger problems, and I did not have anything to eat at home, or whatever it was, that I would, or other big problem, I would be able to focus in this? You see how our physical materiality affects. That's the point of what I'm trying to say. Everything about our material, physical being affects our mind, because our mind is embodied, is not separated, is not going anywhere. You build it yourself, or you allow others to shape it and instrumentalize you and use and abuse you in many ways, to exploit you physically, through unemployment, or to exploit you in many ways. And that's what matters to understand. Not that you suffer, you go through unnecessary suffering in this life experience, inflicted by others or by a system that is built to a pyramid scheme that I used to say, that is to extract wealth from you, from your labor, from your intelligence, from your integrity, to transform us into useful idiots, cannon fodder, and expendable peons. That's what the reality is. And then you expect that you are going to be saved, that what matters is that your soul is going to survive all this pain and is going to be rewarded somewhere, somehow. I mean, I don't know what to call it. I would call it BS. I mean, I'm not, again, I have a lot of respect for many people, especially when they get it right. You know, if you tell me that Christianity, like liberation theology, which is close to the teachings of Christ, if Christ really existed as a human being, liberation theology is the teachings of Christ would be liberation theology, which is the fight against injustice, for the truth, for social truth and cultural truth, then political and economic truth as well. Solidarity, reciprocity, trust. This is the basics of human survival. These were the tools, embodied tools, that were as is the same with empathy and compassion. That they were essential for our survival. And now, these days, what do we worship? Mammon. And that's the problem, that is, there's not technology or cultural sophistication or arts or whatever it is that really changes this paradigm. That's why many people don't get it, because people confuse human development with technological and scientific development, and that's not correct. Progress doesn't go like that. Many people see historic progress as a line that's always going up. No, we are not evolving as a human species. In the sense, as we develop our humanity, we are not evolving. We are not, we are being dehumanized. And many might say, okay, but you know, the religion has lost its role. People don't practice it, so therefore we are being dehumanized because of lack of religion. No, there is lots of religions. By the way, there is lots of cults. Okay, that's the problem. We don't even. It is not even a religious principle to connect us with the. I mean, a religion, religare. That's what I really want. That we reconnect with our true nature, to recognize us as what we are as human beings, which is not the main paradigm, or selfish, egotistic, narcissistic, hedonistic. It is the culture. It is that culture and that societal system that is built around it, that has a deep, it is a deep indoctrination and instrumentalization process. Because again, if you say indoctrination that seems that you get your mind separated from your body. No, you don't have your mind. When you are indoctrinated, you are simultaneously instrumentalized through the weaponization of values, value systems, principles, narratives that shape how we perceive the reality, that shape our identity, our psychosociocultural identity, that by hijacking our cognitive affective systems. And therefore our conscious mind is affected by it. Because our conscience is not separated from, we have this ability, this innate ability. Okay? That's innate on us. The need for justice, truth, and trust in our lives is crucial, because it's part of who we are as a species. We just use language framing. The language and ideological framing makes us to have perspectives that might transform us into that we, instead of building empathy and compassion, which should be part, and thinking about the collective well-being, now we think in meritocratic terms, which it has been, again, that's the same story I was trying to say, that it is the kind of mentality that we believe that is correct. Out of the myths of meritocracy, that the winner takes it all. While you see the other ones around you just enjoying the crumbs. It's not how we evolved as a species. And this is important that we understand it at the deepest level, in an holistic way. And we only can do it if we get it right in terms of us as sociocultural beings. What does that mean? Our language, framing, logic fallacies, rhetorical tricks, and all the tricks that these days we have the use of sound and image as one of the preferred mediums to influence how we perceive reality. You know, there is so many things these days that are part of the web of deceit for social engineering and social control. That's the point of all of that. And we buy into it. Not because we are stupid. I mean, of course we all have different, some of us are more intelligent, like blah, 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 that's true. But it's not the point, is not that. This is how we are. If we start to be trained, this is like you just have to think about yourself as a domesticated animal, okay? And you know that we can domesticate animals for different purposes. Or we can destroy them, as we do with so many animals, that we just, learn. Have you ever, do you know about learned helplessness? I hope you go and look it up. It's done with us. That is done with us. And we still think that we have freedom of choice and freedom of this and freedom of that. It's the same with following the authority, the obedience, the blind obedience. Those things are learned. But since we are social and sociocultural beings, we can be conditioned to adapt and adopt almost everything into every kind of environment. That's this plasticity, this adaptability is a double sword reality that makes us very vulnerable in spite of all our capabilities. This is who we are. And that's why it's very important to have a deep notion of what are the fundamental values and principles that the society that respect the nature of our sociocultural condition. And how can we build a civilization and a society and an economic and political system that truly respects it, and by doing it, developing a liberation culture. The liberation culture is just a culture that helps us to navigate and to avoid the sociopaths and psychopaths, which are the minority. They are the exception. They are the ones that lack the traits, the empathy. These traits are basic, a part of our condition. And by lacking them, they have this advantage, this leverage over us. You know, the narcissistic people, the megalomaniacal, the psychopaths, the sociopaths, don't think about that as a disease. Think about that as lacking the traits. And it is advantage for them because they don't care. They are opportunistic. They are focused on their objectives of grandeur. And they just want to achieve their goals no matter what. They don't care about how much unnecessary suffering they cause and destruction, because for them it's not important. And we must create a system that is not based on following leaders or heroes or saviors or prophets or this or that. It's about humanizing us all and recognizing our limits and not believing that there are people that are better than us, because those people don't exist. Most of them that try to tell you stories about they are being better than you or knowing better than you, they want to exploit you, to use you, to indoctrinate you and instrumentalize you. And when they don't need you anymore, When you don't, you are not anymore profitable, because that's what it is about. He will get rid of you. And they make you believe that is your fault. That's extraordinary, isn't it? But that's the reality. And why? Why don't you ask yourself why this is the reality? Why this is the main culture? Why don't you ask yourself? Where does it come from? How did we get to this situation? How did it evolve historically? Is it natural? Does it have to do with our human nature? Or it is the reality that, since we have our characteristics that are part of our human nature, but that they can be used and abused. And that's where this is the flaw, and that's how we need to understand this flaw and correct it, and have a civilizational paradigm and a societal paradigm that reflects it, that creates immunity, does not allow that creates immunity and reproduces, in a way that generation after generation, it doesn't. We understand. We have the culture to understand that we need to prevent society and civilization to be hijacked by the very people. They are the exception. They are not the norm, but they have this advantage that they can take. They can really instrumentalize us and use us as useful idiots, cannon fodder, and expendable peons. And we need to learn this, because this is the lesson that we need to learn. Not about minds separated from bodies, not about souls that go somewhere, not about the higher self and the spirit and this and that. No, we have a conscience and we need to use it. And that conscience is natural. It's part of who we are. It's part of our socio-cultural condition, and we just need to develop it. And the sense of developing it is to learn it, to use it, to make self-awareness and self-analysis, and understand the concepts and language framing and logical fallacies, and how all these operate and are used by them, by the few, because that's why they need a pyramid scheme, all the structure of the pyramid scheme to work, to protect them, to keep them there, to make the structure function in a way that the pinnacle is safe. Why they need it? Because if we know the truth, if we reject that pyramid scheme, it becomes just a house of cards. Okay? That's why we need to be kept permanently deceived and distracted. And most of us do not care about it enough. Don't care about it enough to go deep enough to understand how the reality really works, and what is the meaning of us as embodied human beings. That we should care about life. You should care about perceiving ourselves as part of the web of life, and build a culture that is part of the web of nature. Not above nature, not against nature, not at war with nature, because if we are at war with everything, you just look at the empire, the Pax Americana. A Pax Americana that is at war, everything is a war for them. A war with this, a war with that, a war for democracy. I mean, everything is a war. Why is that? Where does it come from? Why do we need that? Yes. So there is a lot to think about, to reflect, to have a conscious analysis. But that's what we need to do and to develop. And we learn it from each other, and we should have to get together and discuss this. But with whom? You know? Unfortunately, I don't have a single person in my life with whom I can discuss what I'm talking about here. Because, I mean, this is the truth. Am I mad? Do you think that I'm mad that I don't know what I'm talking about? Yeah, you can think like that. You have the right to think like that. Maybe you should think again. All right, I will end it here. Thank you for listening. I will be back soon.